So do you believe that the 360 and the PS3 are holding back the Xbox One and the PS4? So earlier today, we learned a little bit more about Rise of the Tomb Raider, and there's some more information coming from Game Informer pretty soon, but they did release a little teaser video and a few little excerpts, and we got a few details, and if you want to read those, of course, those are at VGN. But one of the things that was talked about just briefly was that the 360 version of the game is going to be made by an entirely different company. So Crystal Dynamics is saying that they are focused 100% on Xbox One. They're building the game with only Xbox One in mind, and then it's up to whoever else to port this game over or to downgrade whatever parts or whatever. So anyway, what their point was is that the game isn't going to be downgraded simply because there is a 360 version of the game coming out. Now, part of the controversy surrounding this, and not only this game, but a lot of games, is the fact that there is a 360 version being made of the game at all. And some people feel as though since we are officially in the next gen, that developers should just embrace that, and only that, and they should leave the past in the past. And so only develop games for the next gen. And they say if we do this, what that's going to do is, one, it's going to make a lot more people jump over to the next gen, but also that's going to mean more games for the next gen and better games. Kind of insinuating that games are being gimped right now because games are currently on these old platforms. So a lot of people have expressed this opinion, and I can see their point of view. It's easy to see where they're coming from. Earlier tonight, I was listening to Broken Games HD talk about it. If you don't subscribe to him, you should. I'll leave a link down in the description box below. But I would kind of like to play devil's advocate and kind of open up a different perspective about this. And I guess we'll start with the most obvious elephant in the room, and this is one that nobody denies. Everybody recognizes this. Of course, the big reason why developers are still putting games on these old platforms is because of money. And there are still a ton of people on these platforms. If you put a game out on the 360 or PS3, you are opening yourself up to a gargantuan crowd of possible people buying your game. So it just makes economic sense. Also, if you're the platform holders, if you're Sony or you're Microsoft, at this point, they really don't care that you buy either a PS3 or a PS4 or a 360 or an Xbox One. It's all money in their pocket at this point. And eventually, they hope you'll get one of the newer ones. But for right now, they are still selling these pieces of hardware brand new off the shelf. And if you look at the numbers from like just Christmas 2014, consoles like the 360 are still rolling off the shelf by a pretty good pace. So if you're Microsoft or Sony, you have an obligation to still put out content for your new customers. So that's just the business aspect of it, though. You know, that of course doesn't justify it for gamers. That's not putting up the argument for gamers. But of course, that is one area that you do have to pay attention to. But what about gamers? How does it affect us? And so I guess the first question would be, you know, what games have we seen that have been gimped because they appeared on the last generation platform? And some of the games, some of the best games that I actually played last generation were actually on the 360 and the PS3. You know, games like Shadow of Mordor and games like that were actually held back on the 360 and the PS3 whenever they were ported over. Like, I don't believe those systems had the Nemesis system in it, but they didn't feel like they were held back on the next generation platform. And in fact, I believe they had somebody else do that game entirely. Same thing goes with Forza Horizon 2. Quite possibly the best game that I've played so far on the next generation console, but can be found on the 360. But the 360 version is missing a lot of things, and it doesn't look near as good. So again, I don't think that game was held back simply because there was another version that another developer took over and decided to port. You know, those games I don't think affected these titles whatsoever. So, you know, with Crystal Dynamics saying that they are building this game with next generation in mind, and they're not even thinking about the old platform, and they've got somebody else entirely building it, I just don't see how this could diminish the game in any way for really anybody, you know? Developers have the choice still to build the absolute best game they possibly can make. And they are going to have that choice in the future. They're going to have that choice now, and they've always had it in the past. A lazy dev is a lazy dev, and they're going to cut corners regardless. But if a developer wants to make a solid game and really take advantage of the power of a platform, then they're able to do that. And nothing is preventing them, especially somebody else making a port of a game. So for me personally, I just don't see enough evidence to support the fact that gaming would be a lot better if games weren't downgraded and ported to weaker devices, and if fewer of us were actually playing those games. Especially since most of these companies aren't doing it themselves, they're actually hiring third parties in order to do it for them. But that's just my opinion. Post below, let me know, what do you think? Do you think we would be better off if we were only getting games only on the PS4 and the Xbox One and PC? Should the 360 and PS3 hurry up and die? Stay tuned right here to VGN and to this channel for the latest news. That does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.